or to challenge the responsibility of the state and the non-state actors towards the rights of the communities. So when I began that work, it was very difficult. I first tried advocacy, speaking to the state agencies. I went to Parliament to present a petition on behalf of the community. I presented one at Senate, but it was very difficult. Actually, how we managed to shut down these smelters was through the East African community, where since we found that Kenya was very slow to act, we went and passed a law banning the export of lead and lead alloys from East Africa. And then when this was implemented, this is how we managed to shut down the smelter that were polluting the communities around the country. So it was very difficult at that time. We were not getting any response from government, but slowly things have changed, especially because of the litigation case, where the London Environment Court found 70% culpability on the state agencies for failure to protect the rights of the community. And the Court of Appeal found 50% culpability on the state for failing to protect the rights of the community. We are waiting now, we are at the appeals at the Supreme Court stage, and we are waiting for the Supreme Court to also pronounce itself on the issue of responsibility of the state towards the protection of the rights to a clean and healthy environment and other socio-economic rights for the communities. My campaign now has shifted, and we are focusing on nuclear energy campaign, anti-nuclear energy campaign, where we are challenging Kenya to consider using other renewable sources of energy, which are highly available in Kenya. Where I live at the coast of Kenya, the sunshine is always in abundance. People travel from all over the world to come here for the sunshine. So why can't we harness that to produce power and energy for our communities? Why do we have to invest in radioactive material that is going to be detrimental if it leaks? We have seen how Japan is in a fix because of nuclear waste. Kenya has a problem even handling solid waste. So how are we going to manage nuclear waste in our country? So we are challenging this, and this award has come in a very opportune time because it will enable this campaign to go further. We are hoping to bring our case to court on the nuclear issue and see what the court decides also on behalf of the communities.
Thank you. Is there anything that you would like to add, Anthony, from your perspective as a community liaison, how this work has been?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. As Phyllis has put it, I'm a resident of the area that has been picked to host the first reactor in Kenya. And it's an area that is very sensitive environmentally. We have a lot of wildlife, marine. There's a marine national park around there. We have mangrove forest. We have a very old forest that was gazetted in 1932. It's called Araboko Soke Forest, and we are not ready to see this nature go to waste. We also have a lot of fishermen. This is one of the livelihoods activities that our people do. They much depend on this ocean, and exposing this, that would be a very big loss to our community. So we are against installation of this nuclear plant in our area.
Thank you. I'll now open the floor to anybody who has questions. And like I said, if you could please either ask a question in the Q&A chat or raise your hand. But in both cases, introduce yourself with your name and your affiliation. Okay, while we wait, I can ask another question to you, Phyllis. Can you maybe talk about how your work actually began and the personal connection that you have to the work that you do?
Yes. So in 2009, I was not an environmental activist. My background is in business management, and I was working in the corporate society here in Kenya. And in fact, I had just gotten a new job, which to me was really good, where I was supposed to go and work in this industry. Unfortunately, once I had reported to work, I realized that there was very high pollution in that area. And also one of the things that I was supposed to do was process an EIA for that industry where I'd gone to work. Now, I had an issue with that because they're already in full-blown production, and yet I was supposed to do an initial EIA. So I started questioning things from that perspective. But part of an EIA is public participation, and therefore I interacted with the Unohuru community to find out their thoughts about this smelter that had opened in their community. And I realized that many of them had complaints about the pollution that was happening. They said they were unable to breathe. That the effluent that was leaving the industry going into their community was killing their livestock, killing their chicken, and therefore they needed that tested. But worst of all is that after a month of working in that place, my son became very sick, and we tested him for all the tropical diseases, malaria, typhoid, and all that. It was negative. And it got to a point where he was hospitalized because he became very critical. And one of my friends who worked in the state agencies came to hospital to visit me and suggested that I test for lead poisoning. And I asked him why, and he said, that place you work is highly toxic, and we've seen you with your child there so many times, so maybe you need to test for that. And then we drew his blood and sent it to South Africa. And when it came back, he turned positive for lead poisoning at 35 micrograms per deciliter of lead in blood. At that time, WHO was defining lead poisoning at 10 micrograms per deciliter of lead in blood. I went ahead and picked 3 children in Unohuru and tested their blood. All of them tested positive for lead poisoning. I went and picked another 10, and all 10 tested positive for lead poisoning. This is when I began, I quit my job and began a movement to shut down that smelter and remove it from that location. Initially, when we started, it was just about asking them to find a different location for that smelter. But as time moved by, the more they worked, because they worked from 2009, and we managed to shut them down in 2014. So the more they operated in that area, the more intense the pollution became. By the time we tested the Unohuru community mass testing in 2015, the highest lead level in Unohuru was at 420 micrograms per deciliter of lead in blood. That was crazy, more than 800 times the current definition of lead poisoning. So that began my journey as an activist. Actually, the first times people referred to me as an activist, I would deny and say, no, I'm not an activist. I'm just attention to the fact that this thing is happening and someone needs to act on it. But the more I continued to pressure government to take action to protect the community, the more resistance I got. And in 2012, I was arrested. I slept in the police cells, and the next morning they charged me with inciting violence and illegal gathering. I believe that is the day I became an activist. That is the first time I accepted that my role as an activist. Partly thanks to the Unohuru community, because when I was arrested, the community actually came to the police station. They flooded the station. More than 500 people slept outside the station. And when I was taken to court the next morning, they walked from the police station, which is a distance of about half an hour drive. They walked on foot and came to court. And by the time I was arraigned in court, the court was full of the people of Unohuru. This act in itself helped me to admit that, or to accept my role as an environmental activist, and also cemented my resolve to see justice happening for the Omido community. And that is how my journey began as an environmental activist.
Thank you. I will give everybody a moment to ask questions if they have any. Otherwise, I can continue. I don't see anything in the chat right now. Yeah, so I can move on to another question, which is, you talked about in the beginning, it was you as, kind of the forefront, the activist that was helping the community, but today you have a really big network of activists that you support in their work to protect their land and their environment. So can you talk about the network that you've helped create?
Yes, so because of the way that I became an activist, I had never anticipated that I would be threatened or that I would be arrested. There's a time actually there were gunmen that were sent to my house. I escaped narrowly before they shot me. And so these experiences that I went through made me really understand the place of the space that land and environment defenders occupy and the danger and the risk that they face. Unfortunately, with so much development activities going on in the country right now, actually in East Africa, many young activists are rising up to defend their environment, to defend their way of life, to defend their livelihoods. And they rise up not understanding what is going to hit them after they do that, because they are, from a genuine point of view, trying to reach out to government, telling them this is how this thing is affecting us. You need to look at this and address it. And unfortunately, what they are met with is a lot of reprisals. And so this made me come up with the idea of setting up a network of land and environment defenders. So right now we have a network of land and environment defenders that has over 40 organizations and over 80 land and environment defenders covering the whole of Kenya, but also Uganda and Tanzania. And what we try to do is we contribute in terms of advocacy to the work they do. We train them, we call them for trainings just to enhance their capacity to do their work safely, to build their leadership capacities, but also we try to respond as fast as we can to the emergency situations that they face. Thankfully, because I have worked for quite a while, partners from all over the world that are able to respond to the needs of these land and environment defenders. So we are able to connect them to partners who assist them, especially when they are at risk. We are able to reach them very fast to prevent maybe their killing or their disappearance. And this has been quite effective. I remember there's a time one activist was picked up from his home by the police. And when we went to the police station, he had disappeared and we were unable to reach him for the whole night. But because of the fast action that we took, we were able to trace him up to, he had been taken to a very far off county, a different county from where he lives. And he had been arraigned there among cattle rustlers, amongst cattle rustlers for something that he didn't even know what was going on. So they were just setting him up so that they could put him in jail. We were able to respond very fast to prevent his disappearance, but also to respond to his need. So that is how the network works. We keep an eye on all the land and environment defenders in our network. We try to always know what is going on with them. We respond whether they wake us up at night or at any time. We're able to respond to them just to ensure that they are kept safe during the course of their work. Because even now, though my profile is quite built, just last week, police raided training that I was doing in the Uyombo community, a human rights training, and they dispersed us forcefully. They surrounded me and said they had orders that I should not address the community, I should leave. They are not going, the police will not leave the place unless I leave the place first. So if they can do this to me, and yet I'm I consider myself a very mature activist. You can imagine what force and how they deal with activists who are just coming up. So this is why we set up the Network of London Environment Defenders. And we are very lucky to have support globally for the LEDs that enables them to continue their work.
Thank you for sharing that. I guess we can also talk about, you mentioned in the beginning, but your work has also transitioned to educating community members about the plans for the nuclear plant. So can you talk about the process of how you have informed the community members of what this actually means for them and your plans for the future?
Right, so at this point, we are challenging just procedural and environmental rights for the community, that is access to information, public participation, and access to effective remedy. That is because in Kenya, there is a process, an EIA process, which needs to be put in place before any project is set up. And this involves public participation, where the community is supposed to be educated on what is going on. Unfortunately, this has not happened for the Uyombo community. The community has never been told what is going on. They just see these government people coming up what to set up their weather stations, to do their seismic test, but they don't involve the community. They are working on community land without actually involving the community. So at this point, we are just challenging that because the project has not yet started. What we are trying to do is dissuade government from investing in this project, because much as it doesn't make economic sense for Kenya, but also the area that they have chosen is an area that is under the UNESCO biosphere. It has critical, it's a critical ecosystem. It's a critical marine ecosystem. It's a critical ecosystem in terms of, we have a very old forest in that area. We have a mangrove forest in that area, which the communities depend on for the carbon trading and their livelihoods. It's also a nesting area for the fish, where the fishermen are able to get their livelihoods from there. There are women who buy the fish from the fishermen and prepare them and sell them also to the community members. So there is that area actually supports a very large section of the community, but also to remember that the marine park that is in that area brings tourists who come to this area to come and see the dolphins, to come to the beach and all that. All this will be affected if Kenya decides to invest in a nuclear reactor. So at this point, this is what we are challenging. We are collecting as much data as we can. We are partnering with international partners to put the government reports to test, so that we can be able to challenge them in a judicial process and ensure that the community's rights are protected, but also that Kenya does not waste taxpayers' money on a venture that is absolutely not necessary for the country at this time.
Thank you. Anthony, do you want to add anything to that from your perspective?
Yeah, we're also looking at the displacement of the population in case they decide to put this reactor there. There are many investments that have been done by the community. There are schools in that land. There's a plan to develop that area in terms of other education facilities like colleges, universities. This is something you had put up earlier for the community to benefit from. And if this happens, then the people will be displaced. Another problem that we are facing, if we let this this reactor be installed there, is the issue of terrorism. As you are all aware, this will be a very, very big target for terrorists, and we don't want our people to live in fear of radiation, of terrorism. These are things that we are really afraid of, and we want us to continue living peacefully without fear of any radiation or terrorism acts. We're also looking at the waste management and the disposal. if this plant is put in our area, which is called Uyombo, then what mechanism do they have for the waste disposal and management of the same? These are areas that we are really scared, and we pray that this doesn't happen. That is why we are opposing this project. Lastly, is the cost of the project. As you are all aware, nuclear reactors are very expensive, and spending 500 billion Kenya shillings to put up one nuclear reactor at a time when Kenya needs this money for other infrastructural development, such as schools, hospitals, health facilities, infrastructure in terms of roads, then this is wasting a lot of money. We rather put this money in somewhere in other projects, develop solar, develop the geothermal, develop wind energy, and any other source of energy that are safe for us. But we believe that going nuclear, then we are going the right direction. So we are really against this project.
Yeah, thank you for explaining all of that. Before we wrap up, is there any final message that either of you would like to share, something that we haven't covered today?
No, just to reiterate the fact that even though the UN now recognizes the right to a clean and healthy environment for all inhabitants of the earth, this would be a pipe dream if the land and environment defenders do not raise up to protect these rights for communities. And therefore, it's critical that we all protect and watch over land and environment defenders in our areas globally. I'm sure in every country, in every village around the globe, you'll find a land and environment defender. It is the right time now that we speak up for the protection of the land and environment defenders and ensure that they're empowered to continue doing their work.
Thank you. So with that, we will wrap up the press conference today. As I said in the beginning, if you would like the link to the recording of the press conference, I will send it to you happily. Just email me. And a reminder that we have one final press conference today at 1 p.m. European time, and that is with Dr. Eunice Brookman Amitha, who has also received the Right Livelihood Award this year. That's all. Thank you very much for joining.